I honestly still cannot believe the level of sheer, unbelievable entitlement my parents showed, and how far they were willing to go to protect my so-called golden boy, brother, Leo, even if it meant completely destroying my future. But trust me, they never saw the fallout coming, not in a million years, because when they thought they had me trapped and suspended my schooling until I apologized to him for something he actually did, I simply looked my mother dead in the eye and said, "All right." And that single word was the beginning of their nightmare, because what they didn't realize was that I wasn't just accepting their ridiculous demand, I was accepting the freedom they had just handed me, and within 24 hours, Leo was running down the school corridor, his face sheeted, white and slick with panic, screaming at me, "Please, tell me you haven't posted it." And my father's smug victory laced smile evaporated right there on his face. But posted what? Was I a completely cold-hearted monster for turning their protection of their favorite son into a weapon that dismantled their entire perfect family structure, forcing them to face the consequences of their years of toxic favoritism? I genuinely need to know. If your entire academic future was threatened by your own family to shield a guilty sibling, would you have been as ruthless as I was? This story is long, detailed, and honestly still makes my blood pressure spike. So settle in, because this is the whole messy truth. My name is Clara, and for as long as I can remember, I have existed in the perpetual shadow of my brother, Leo. He is 2 years older than me, and by all external measures, he was everything my parents ever wanted. A star athlete, effortlessly popular, charming, and most importantly to them, completely unburdened by the critical thinking or academic ambition that defined me. I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the girl with the full academic scholarship to the prestigious Northwood Academy, a scholarship that covered $30,000 of the $40,000 annual tuition, leaving my parents with a very manageable and affordable $10,000 to cover the rest. This scholarship was my ticket out, my security blanket, and the single thing I had earned completely on my own merit. But even that wasn't enough to earn me anything close to the reverence Leo commanded. Leo, on the other hand, was there purely on his looks and the hope that he'd land a sports scholarship, a pipe dream that was quickly fading as he hit his senior year without any solid offers. A fact my parents conveniently ignored, while continually reminding me how much stress his career put on the family. The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was a loud, obnoxious soundtrack to my life. If Leo needed a new pair of expensive cleats, the credit card was out instantly, no questions asked. But if I needed a $1.50 textbook, it required an hour-long guilt-inducing negotiation about the family budget. If I came home with a perfect report card, I was met with a brief, "That's nice, dear." Well, one of Leo's mediocre game highlights would earn a celebratory dinner and phone calls to all their friends. I learned early on that to survive in that house, I had to be invisible and independent, relying solely on myself and my own hard work. This taught me a valuable lesson. If I wanted something, I had to secure it with ironclad commitment, and my education was the most valuable thing I owned. The Northwood Scholarship, which I had fought tooth and nail for, had a critical clause. It was contingent upon continuous enrollment and academic standing, meaning if I left or was suspended, I lost it and there was no appeal process. The money would simply revert back to the Academy's general fund. This was the leverage my parents, specifically my mother, knew they possessed, and the leverage she ultimately decided to use against me, purely to protect Leo from a minor, to them, scandal he had caused. The incident that sparked this entire catastrophe happened about 2 weeks before winter break. Leo, in his infinite wisdom and lack of foresight, had been caught by the vice principal tagging a highly offensive, misogynistic slogan onto the main wall of the school gymnasium. The security cameras caught him in the act, there was no denying it, and the potential consequences were severe. Immediate suspension, public expulsion, and possibly criminal charges given the nature of the vandalism. which would have absolutely tanked any remaining chance he had at a sports scholarship. My parents were, naturally, hysterical, but not about the morality of his actions, only about the optics and the consequences for him. They spent a full day in meetings with the principal and the school board, desperately trying to negotiate a way out. They tried everything, claiming it was a misunderstanding, blaming peer pressure, and even offering to pay 10 times the cost of the damage. But the principal, Mr. Harrison, was firm. The school had a zero-tolerance policy for hate speech and vandalism. Leo was going to be suspended for 2 weeks and have a permanent disciplinary note on his transcript. It was an outcome they simply could not accept, and that's when they decided to weaponize the only thing they had against me, my silence and my scholarship. I had been at the library studying for my midterms, completely oblivious to the war they were waging. When I got home, the atmosphere in the living room was thick with tension. My father was pacing, and my mother was sitting rigid on the sofa, clutching a tissue. They didn't even look up when I walked in. "Clara," my mother started, her voice dangerously calm. "Sit down. We need to talk about Leo." I knew instantly that whatever followed was going to be completely illogical and unfair. She explained the situation, downplaying Leo's actions as a silly boy's prank, and portraying Mr. Harrison as a tyrant bent on destroying their son's life. "The only thing that can save him now," she said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "is a unified family front and a statement of character. You, Clara, need to take responsibility for your brother." My jaw literally dropped. "What, Mom? I wasn't even there. I was at the library. The camera footage is clear." She waved her hand dismissively, as if my actual innocence was an inconvenience. "Details, Clara. We need you to go to Mr. Harrison tomorrow and explain that you saw Leo tagging the wall, that you tried to stop him, but that you gave him the paint can earlier, and you told him." The slogan was acceptable in an artistic context. Say it was a misunderstanding of intent and that you share culpability. If you do this, they will have to review the disciplinary action, likely lessen the charge, and drop the permanent note. I looked at her, then at my father, who just nodded with a weary, complicit look on his face. "It's for the family, Clara. Just a small lie to protect your brother's future," he mumbled. The absolute audacity was stunning, but I didn't yell or cry. I just felt a cold, clear focus descend on me. I understood the game. This was my life, my future, against Leo's, and they were choosing him. I refused, of course, politely, firmly, and calmly. I explained that lying to the principal would result in my own immediate, non-negotiable expulsion for academic misconduct and complicity in vandalism, which would mean I would lose my $30,000 scholarship, and that I would never be accepted to a university of that caliber again. I laid out the facts, the scholarship clauses, the real consequences, hoping logic would pierce through their protective bubble. It didn't. That's when the threats started. "If you refuse to help your brother, then we cannot, in good conscience, continue to support a child who is so selfish." My mother hissed, her eyes like chips of ice. "Starting tomorrow, you are suspended from Northwood. We will not pay your $10,000 tuition fee until you go to Mr. Harrison and give the statement we discussed. We'll call him tonight and tell him there's a family emergency and that you won't be in. You can sit at home and think about how you're choosing a textbook over your own flesh and blood. You are grounded indefinitely. You have no school, no allowance, no phone privileges, until you apologize to your brother for putting him through this stress and agree to help him." They thought they had cornered me. They knew I lived and breathed my education, and they figured 2 or 3 days of sitting at home, watching my future crumble, would break me. They had a triumphant, almost pitying look on their faces, as if to say, "See, we always win." I met my mother's gaze, held it for a long, silent moment, and instead of giving them the tears, the pleading, or the dramatic outburst they expected, I simply and quietly said, "All right." The word hung in the air, hollow and unsettling. They were confused but pleased. "Good, now go to your room," my father ordered, clearly relishing his authority. Leo, who had been listening from the hall, walked past me and gave me the smuggest, most arrogant smirk he could muster. A look that said, "I told you they'd always choose me." That smirk was the final nail in the coffin of my filial duty. The next morning, I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I went to my room, pulled out my laptop, and began the meticulous work of deconstruction. They had suspended my schooling, but they had not suspended my access to the rest of the world, and most importantly, they hadn't suspended my access to the information I had been hoarding for years. Leo was their golden boy, which meant they had cleaned up every mess he ever made, but some messes leave residue. You see, a few months prior, I had stumbled upon something truly damning while trying to fix a software issue on my dad's old work computer before he donated it. It was a digital folder labeled taxes, and inside were documents related to my father's small, side consulting business. I'm a meticulous person, and I had instantly noticed discrepancies: large, suspicious cash payments, shell company invoices, and what looked very much like deliberate attempts to underreport income and overreport expenses. I had downloaded the entire folder, copied it to 2 different encrypted cloud drives, and then deleted it from his computer, telling myself it was just for safekeeping, maybe as future leverage against the constant bullying. I never intended to use it, but now, sitting in my room, suspended from the life I had built, facing the complete annihilation of my future for a cause that was not my own, I realized my parents had just given me permission. They made the first move. They raised the stakes to total war. My parents and Leo left the house that morning, confident that I was locked in my room, contemplating my inevitable surrender. They expected a tearful apology by dinner time. Instead, I spent the morning preparing a detailed, anonymous report, including every single incriminating document, referencing shell company names with my father's personal bank statements, and preparing the entire package to be sent to 2 key recipients: the Internal Revenue Service (IRS) and the Northwood Academy Board of Trustees. The Northwood Board was important because my father was a well-known alumnus and a very minor, but loud donor, and the documentation proved his donations were mostly through opaque means, potentially connected to the tax fraud. If he was shown to be committing fraud while having a son in the school, it would remove any remaining goodwill he had with them, cementing Leo's expulsion. My plan was simple. I wouldn't post the information online. I would mail it, certified and anonymous, to the authorities. But before that, I had one final, symbolic act to perform, an act that would serve as the public notice that the golden boy was about to fall. I put on a hat and a large coat, walked the 2 miles to school, and went to the main office. Because my parents had called ahead saying I was out due to a family emergency, no one was expecting me. I approached the secretary, who smiled kindly and asked why I wasn't in class. I handed her a crisp, official-looking form. "I need to submit this immediately. It's an official request for my locker to be cleaned out and all contents shipped to my home address, effective immediately. My parents and I have decided to withdraw my enrollment. No reason is necessary for the records, just effective withdrawal. Thank you." The secretary, used to the endless bureaucracy of academic life, barely blinked. She stamped the form and handed me a copy. I then walked to my locker, spent 10 minutes carefully emptying it of everything except the core, non-essential books, leaving it noticeably, glaringly empty, a perfect, quiet sign of my departure. I then put the form, now stamped and officially processed, in a large manila envelope and left it on Leo's chair in the main lecture hall, where he would find it when his suspension ended. I walked home, feeling lighter than I had in years, the weight of their expectations and my $30 0 security blank, it now off my shoulders. I was free, but more than that, I was armed. I went straight to the post office and sent the packages, certified mail, return receipt requested, to the IRS and the Board of Trustees. The die was cast, the documents were posted, just not to social media. So that was the situation I was in. My parents had leveraged my entire future against my brother's immediate, self-inflicted crisis. They thought they were punishing me, but they had simply cut the strings holding me to a life that had always demanded I be less than I was. My decision was made. I had sent the tax fraud documents and withdrawn from the school, and the official confirmation of that withdrawal was waiting for Leo and my parents to find. Before I tell you about the chaos that erupted when they finally understood the depth of my cold, calculated reaction, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have sucked it up, apologized to Leo, and tried to salvage your education? Or would you have burned the whole house down, accepting the loss of the scholarship to ensure that the people who betrayed you faced the most severe possible consequences? Let me know your gut reaction. Would you have chosen justice or self-preservation? The next day was a Tuesday, and I sat in my room reading a novel, perfectly calm, while my mother occasionally peered in with an expression of smug anticipation, clearly waiting for me to break. The phone calls, however, were what broke their calm. It started innocently enough, just a couple of calls my father took in his home office, which he always did with the door closed. But then, around noon, his voice rose sharply. I heard him shout, "The board! Why would the board be calling me about an anonymous complaint?" He quickly slammed the door, but the seed of panic had been planted. Later that afternoon, the real eruption happened. Leo had decided to sneak into the house early, his 2-week suspension finally over, still wearing that pathetic, arrogant smirk he had given me the day before. He was heading straight for the fridge, already demanding a snack, when he must have checked his messages. He didn't even make it to the kitchen. I heard the frantic drumming of his cleats on the hardwood floor as he sprinted upstairs and slammed open my door, his face no longer smug, but a mask of absolute gut-wrenching terror. "Clara, where are my books? Where is your stuff? What did you do to your locker?" He was panting, completely unraveling. I simply closed my book and looked at him, utterly calm. "I emptied it," I said flatly. "I withdrew my enrollment. I won't be returning to Northwood." His eyes widened, the reality of my action hitting him like a physical blow. But the scholarship, Mom said you wouldn't get it back." I just shrugged. "That's right, I lost it. Just like you lost your chance at a scholarship when you decided to be a misogynistic vandal. Difference is, I chose to lose mine, you earned yours." He recoiled, but then his expression shifted to pure panic. A different, deeper kind of fear. No, that's not what I mean. The transfer papers. I found the form. It said official withdrawal. Effective immediately, and in a manila envelope on my lecture hall seat, there was a photocopy of the form and a note that said, "The first package has been posted. Your move, golden boy." "What did you post, Clara? Posted what?" His voice was hysterical, and it carried right down the hall. My father, hearing the commotion, threw open his office door, still in his expensive suit, his face contorted in anger. "What is all this noise? Clara, did you tell your brother you were withdrawing?" I turned my attention to him, my voice still perfectly level. "Yes, Dad, you suspended my schooling until I apologized to Leo. I said all right. Since I couldn't be a student without your funds, I decided to become a non-student entirely. It saved you $10.00 for the rest of the year, which is great because I know money is tight right now." The smugness on my father's face, the one that had been there since the previous evening, vanished immediately. He didn't connect the withdrawal to the posted threat, but he certainly connected the withdrawal to his own arrogance. "You did what? You threw away $30,000. Are you insane? You're going back tomorrow. I'm calling Mr. Harrison right now. We will pay the tuition." I shook my head slowly. "No, you won't. I lost the scholarship the moment I submitted the form. Continuous enrollment, Dad. Remember, you and Mom relied on that clause to threaten me. Turns out I could use it too. It's gone, irrecoverable, and I'm not going back to Northwood, ever. I sent an anonymous package to the board and the IRS this morning, Dad. The one Leo was asking about." The color drained completely from his face. leaving it the sickly white of old parchment. He finally understood. The threat wasn't about the school. It was about the tax fraud I knew about and now had acted upon. The documents were posted. Leo's eyes went wide, and he looked from me to our father, suddenly realizing the stakes were far higher than his vandalism. Taxes? Dad, what is she talking about? What package? My mother, who had been listening silently from the doorway, stumbled backward, clutching her chest. Clara, you wouldn't dare. That's illegal. You're destroying your family. I stood up then, placing my hands on the desk and leaning toward them. You destroyed my future first, Mom. You suspended my education to protect a vandal, and you used the one thing I earned, my scholarship, as a weapon against me. You taught me the price of my loyalty, and I decided it wasn't worth $10,000. It was worth the full price of consequences. The resulting chaos was exactly what I had planned for. The certified mail packages arrived at their destinations. My father's minor business tax fraud, once investigated, spiraled into a much bigger mess involving penalties, back taxes, and a full audit. His reputation as a trustworthy businessman was ruined, and he had to liquidate assets just to pay off the penalties and legal fees, effectively wiping out a huge chunk of their retirement savings and forcing him to take a less prestigious, lower-paying job. The Northwood Board, upon seeing the documents, not only cemented Leo's permanent expulsion for his vandalism, but also publicly cut all ties with my father due to the questionable ethics of his past donations and business practices. Leo, the golden boy, went from a minor scandal to a full-blown pariah, forced to finish high school at a terrible public school and with no chance of a sports scholarship, because the disciplinary note was permanent and now widely known. As for me, the scholarship was lost, yes, but I was free. I took the next 6 months and focused solely on private studies, taking the SAT again and applying to various state universities. My maternal grandmother, who had always hated my parents' favoritism and my father's arrogance, heard about the mess through the family grapevine. She quickly figured out who the real whistleblower was and, recognizing my commitment and academic potential, decided to intervene. She opened an investment account for me, securing enough funds to cover the tuition for a top-tier state university, and helped me transfer my credits. I started college that fall, studying applied mathematics, completely free of my parents' control and living on campus with the peace of mind that I was finally the master of my own destiny. They tried to contact me to beg for my return, to accuse me of being a spoiled, heartless brat. But the truth was, they created the monster they now feared. My parents' desire to save $10,000 and protect their son ended up costing them their savings, their reputation, and their daughter. It was total, brutal justice. The only thing I lost was the scholarship, but I gained freedom and the knowledge that I will never let anyone use my future against me again. So tell me, was I wrong for what I did? Did I go too far, or did I simply teach them the hard lesson they desperately needed to learn? Like this video if you were on my side, standing up for myself against toxic favoritism. Subscribe for more stories like this, where the underdog finally gets their well-deserved revenge, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.